Today we're going to talk about the Conley case. This is a cautionary tale for small business owners specifically, and how you structure buy-sell agreements with your business partner and the implications of those decisions for the estate planning for the deceased business partner. So I'll tell you the case specifics here in a minute, but there's three concepts that we want to think through as we read through the case on this. Number one is the type of buy-sell that was being used was amongst two brothers, a family business. One was a 75% owner, the other a 25% owner, and they were using what they call an entity purchase stock redemption buy-sell agreement. And all that's a lot of words to mean these two brothers that owned this company had a life insurance policy on each other. It was owned by the business. The business was not only the owner, the payer of the premiums, and the beneficiary of the policy itself. Prior to the Conley case, the second piece is that when the death benefit of these policies pay out, the surviving owner would use the proceeds, the business would use the proceeds to pay out the deceased estate for their piece of the business, and then they would take the shares of that deceased partner back and absorb those back into the business. And prior to this case, IRS considered that a wash. So if the business used life insurance, $3 million to pay out $3 million to the deceased owner, they absorbed that shares, it wouldn't have any sort of impact on the deceased estate planning, right? It wouldn't be carried into the value of their estate from an estate planning purpose. And then the third piece, understanding that at a high level, when you have somebody that passes away, a business partner, the estate tax calculation is everything that they own in their estate at the time of death, and that includes interests in businesses as well. So those are three key points to understand as we walk through the specifics of the case. So we have two brothers, one a 75% owner, Michael Conley, and his brother Thomas Conley was a 25% owner. They had a $3.5 million life insurance policy that was owned to basically pay off the brothers. They valued the business at about, let's call it $4 million. And the Michael Conley, the 75% owner, passed away. And so what happened? It triggered a death benefit, and they said, okay, you're 75% of this $4 million. Here's $3 million from the death benefit of the life insurance policy. The business paid out his $3 million to his estate, and then they absorbed those shares. So now the other brother was the only shareholder in the business. In the past, this has been a non-issue, but as they went to work through their estate planning, the IRS came back and said, hey, hold on a second. You actually need to carry in not just your percent ownership of the business, but as well as the life insurance proceeds. So not only did he have to take into account the $3 million in the business valuation when he went and filed his estate taxes, but they also had to carry in the death benefit that was paid. So the implication of this was a potential huge bill that was unexpected on the estate planning front. So if we do the math on that real quick, as a 75% owner, he should have had a $3 million, estate tax, asset that goes into his estate tax that he owed taxes on. Instead, it actually ratcheted that up to about $5.2 million because he had to carry in his percentage of the life insurance policy as well. So the court was challenging this on two fronts. One, the traditional, IRS stance is the death benefit shouldn't go on top of the business. It should be a pass-through and an offset. So they're basically stating that because the business owned the policy, it needs to sit there on top of what the actual business valuation is. The IRS didn't actually win just on the lower courts. This thing was appealed all the way to the US Supreme Court, and it was actually, I believe it went in a 9-0 favor for the IRS. All right, so let's talk about maybe three takeaways at a high level what we should be thinking through here. So when we look, we didn't get into all the details, but one thing that was noted, there's really a lack of business valuation done consistently ahead of the brother's death. So having that done on a regular basis will help your case from a business valuation standpoint. So that's one big thing that you can do to help create consistency from a planning standpoint. The second piece that's actually in the Supreme Court, we'll list the case up here, but it's really focused on, they even referenced, consider a cross-purchase agreement. So rather than the business owning the life insurance policies, one idea, and they even reference it in there, is, hey, the brothers could have just owned life insurance on each other instead of having the business own it, and that could have avoided the influx of cash into the business entity and thus creating this issue on the estate planning side for the brother that passed away. So just reframing and restructuring those buy-sell agreements could be massive in a fairly simple fashion. And there's a lot of lawyers that we've been talking to about this as well and their take on tax law and business entities. And one thing that you're starting to see consistently across the board is folks creating separate entities that may even own life insurance to come in and create the liquidity for the family-owned or shareholder business that's trying to protect. So there's a multitude of different ways to go here, but the biggest thing is, one, consistency in business valuations. Two is really understanding what your current structure is if you do have a buy-sell agreement. Who owns the policy? Is it the business? Is it the shareholders on each other? And then three, just considering, hey, if you are sitting in this type of structure that was kind of shot down by the Supreme Court case, really reviewing those on an ongoing basis to make sure that you're not going to fall into a bucket where a deceased spouse or estate is going to have to come up with an extra, in this case, close to $1 million in real cash to close out the estate versus all they had to do is structure this a little bit differently. All right, so let's talk about the takeaways here from a planning standpoint. So a 10 capital, what do we want to do for our business owner clients? Well, typically these cross-purchase sale plans, in whatever structure these are considered to be owned in, these are many times set it and almost forget it plans over a long period of time. And if you read the court ruling, the appeals, what came down from the Supreme Court is, one, understand how things are framed and how things are structured within whatever type of buy-sell that you have going on. Two, what was referenced in the case is the buy-sell didn't reference the purchase price. And so that's a big thing, updating those buy-sells on an ongoing basis, just like you would for your will. So if you have you need to go update your will and your personal estate plan every 5 years or so, unless a big life event occurs. That's no different than from a business planning standpoint. These legal documents need to be reviewed and updated as needed. So not just how life insurance is potentially owned for these buy-sell agreements, an updated buy-sell, as well as an updated valuation on an ongoing basis. That was the other problem that these brothers didn't have a lot to fall back on, because it doesn't sound like, by reading the case, that they had a real formal valuation on the business on an ongoing front. So those are three kind of pieces that we can continue to work on from a planning standpoint, and just set it on a calendar every 5 years, unless a big life event changes. Maybe you bring in a new partner or you cash out another partner. But if things are steady as she goes, this is just an emphasis on the fact that as a business owner, it's super important to sit down with your advisor and structurally look at this and how things are laid out on a regular fashion. So with that, if you have any questions, reach out to us. I hope this helps a little bit, and we'll talk to you next week.